we're gonna talk about the terminal list, which is kind of this kind of came out of left field, I think.
It did.
We both, I remember texting you and being like, "Hey, this show with Chris Pratt," and you're like, "Oh yeah, the terminal list. I'm gonna watch that." So it's just randomly like got onto Amazon like a couple weeks before it came out, and they were somewhat promoting it. Did you? I don't know. Like, I haven't seen a ton of promotion about it. I don't know if it's just like the algorithm hasn't been pushing the show my way, or if they're kind of if it's been like some. I don't want to say blacklisting, but Chris Pratt obviously is not exactly a beloved actor currently. At least if you look at a lot of the mainstream stuff. But it was actually the thing that got me wanting to watch the show because, like I've said in past episodes, I really want to see Chris Pratt in better IPs. So he's done with Jurassic Park, which I'm pretty sure bombed, by the way. So all those people on TikTok can
who were
suck
saying
it.
we were wrong.
Yeah, because they're like, well, Jurassic Park's a massive franchise. It's like doesn't mean that it's good, guys. There's a difference, right? Star Wars made a lot of money too. It still sucked. The new stuff.
Yeah.
And so I was like, sweet. I was like, here's an opportunity. It's a totally different role for him than something like Jurassic Park or Parks and Rec or Guardians of the Galaxy. This is a very, very serious show.
Yes, it is.
Like, did you think it borderlined on like too serious, or was it like, did it get into that like sweet spot?
For me, it got into the sweet spot.
Okay.
But I will also look. I think a part of that is that, I come from watching these movies like, Marvel has, and they can't ever handle a serious scene properly without undercutting it with humor. And so with the terminal list, I enjoyed the fact that, hey, there was a serious tone to it, and the humor for me was paced out accordingly to kind of add some brevity to it.
There's little bits of it here and there, but it's never one of those situations where it's undercutting the serious moments in it, because there's some brutal stuff in the show.
It's a show that knows itself and carries it out. It's not trying to be something that it's not.
Exactly. It knows exactly what it is. It knows what it's trying to do. What's really funny is that, I can't remember which episode it is. I was going to pull up the list. I think it's towards the end. It's the one where he's like out in the wilderness and he's getting chased by the FBI.
Yeah, I think that's episode 7.
Because there's 8 episodes. Is that right?
Yeah, 8 episodes. So it's 8 or 9.
It's 6 or 7. And he apparently that was supposed to be like an homage to Rambo. And it's really funny because I think it's the weakest episode in the show. I
agree with you.
I get what they were going with. Because he's like in the wilderness, he's trying to survive. He obviously doesn't want to like kill these people, because that's not like the purpose of it. But anyway, we're getting a little out of it. Do you want to kind of explain to everyone what the show is about, and then we'll kind of like we'll go through it?
So before I do that, I will say I didn't see any advertising on this. The whole reason why I watched this is because I got a bunch of comments on TikTok from people saying, "Hey, y'all should watch the terminal list." And I'm like, what are you even talking about? And so I went and looked it up, and I was like, oh, I didn't even know this was coming out. So yeah maybe it was, I don't want to say shadow banned, but, didn't have as much throttle as other content Amazon puts out. And maybe it doesn't make sense because of the people that we follow. It should be content that steers our way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but The Terminal List is a show about Navy SEAL Commander James Reese, whose platoon is killed in a covert operation in the Middle East gone awry. And he later discovers that there are people who conspire to kill them, and he goes on a revenge tour. And so that's pretty much, at this point forward, we're going to spoil the heck out of this show.
Yes.
So this is your warning. Go watch it if you don't want to hear this review. But we're about to get into it. So what themes? I don't know if you already had an idea on the way you wanted to go, but I thought about getting into the themes first. There were a bunch of themes in this.
The theme of the government sucks.
Yes.
Well, you got
the conspiracy theory theme.
I'm a little like legitimately hesitant about themes a lot of the time because I think people focus on them too much. But there's stuff there. There's, you could say you have this theme of like this undying like brotherhood between our main character and his Navy SEALs.
Yep.
You've got betrayal. You've got trauma. You've got
revenge.
Revenge is a big one. I one of the things I thought was really funny is that after we had decided like, hey, we're gonna watch a show and talk about it, I was in the middle of watching Stranger Things, and I went to the gym, and my trainer Lit, he was like, oh dude, are you watching The Terminal List? He's like, I'm like halfway through it and it's awesome. He's like, it's like if he was the Punisher, but and then he said something else, I can't remember what it was, but he made like a Punisher reference, which is very, very apparent.
Yes.
Possibly an influence. So
I thought about that as well.
There's a little bit of that in there. Little bit of that going on. I don't know. Were there any other themes? Did any of those themes like stick out at you as like being super relevant, other than stuff that's like, yeah, revenge plots and revenge as a theme it's in a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So you have the conspiracy theory, and then it changes to revenge, right? And then you have the moral dilemma of the FDA using the emergency use authorization to approve and fast track an experimental unproven drug that hasn't gone through rigorous testing that previous drugs have gone through, used to prevent trauma from encoding on the brain.
Dude, I love the amygdala line getting dropped. I thought that was pretty cool.
The medical trials run amok as well in that, how pharmaceutical companies should not be trusted, not to trust politicians and scientists who approve experimental drugs, and just in general, how the government gets things wrong more than they get things right. The effect that grief has on a person as well, the corruption within the government and military, and as you said, the celebration of military fellowship, how the letter agencies are corrupt and evil, and then did I mention the subplot of how the drug didn't have the proper clinical trials before it got approved?
I every time that theme pops up in something, so there was a show that got canceled that was also on Prime that hit a little too close to home with that, and shoot, I'm forgetting the name of it. But it was very much about like an evil pharmaceutical company that was trying to like depopulate the planet, and it came out right in the middle of Rona.
Yep.
And it only got that one season. I thought the show was crap anyway because they kill off one of the best characters in the show in like the first or second episode, and they were like, "Oh, we were trying to make it shocking." I'm like, "No, you just made it suck." Like you took legitimately the best actress in the show and just offed her for no reason. It's like you kind of deserved what you got for that. I was like, that was such a terrible decision. Anyway,
Game of Thrones reading has ruined so much.
Dude,
writing.
It has ruined so much because everyone thinks they can pull that off.
Yeah. It's like, no, guys, there was a specific structure that George had in doing this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's like you had a lot of really likable characters, whereas this show had maybe like two, and then you killed off one of the best ones. And it's like the way that they did it is it's like one of the other... I'm sorry, I'm totally going off book a little bit, but like they killed off the person who would have been the quote unquote like leader for another person who was going to become the like de facto leader of the group. And it's like, how on earth do you justify this action and also these people being like, yeah, totally normal, we'll still follow this new leader around even though she randomly murdered someone who was our friend. Like it didn't make any sense. Totally took me out of it. Anyway, that show got canceled. Doesn't matter. So a lot of that stuff that was going on with this, I thought it was really interesting. One thing I'm really ready for a lot of these political thrillers, or this sort of like, you guess you could call it a political thriller, right? Is that
right?
That fair or whatever?
I think that's fair.
Is this good guy FBI thing?
It's
in like, it's such a trope, dude. It's in everything. And I'm like, I really need a show where like the FBI are just like scumbags.
Like they typically, most of them are in
Yeah,
real
like
life.
something realistic where like they're also behind the scenes, because the FBI comes out super squeaky clean in this show, and I'm like, I'm not into that. Like the show gets a lot right, I think, as far as what is very true to life with a lot of these things.
Yeah.
Money corrupting a lot of people to the point where they're willing to cover up by murdering people. Including these Navy SEALs, which is kind of the whole plot behind that. So yeah, I think the show's pretty good. I think for the most part, the action is good. I've seen some people complain that it's not quite up to snuff with how it would really go down, which I think is which I think is really interesting, considering Jack Carr, the guy that wrote this, I'm pretty sure he was involved heavily in this show.
Yeah, and he's a
Navy SEAL.
Ex-Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
And I saw actually the opposite, people in the military praising it. Yeah, praising it, how
I was just looking through
it was.
I was just looking through Amazon reviews, trying to get like an idea of like what people were thinking. A lot of people liked it, but I remember one specific one where the guy was like, it's trash because all of the action scenes aren't realistic to what would happen in actual military combat. And I couldn't think of anything. Yeah, I couldn't think of anything that like someone would have to specifically show me a moment in the show where it was like, hey, this happened, it doesn't make sense, or like they would never do this in that scenario or whatever. You'd have to be very specific about it, which of course most reviews aren't. People are just like, I like it, good, and then they move on.
Beep boop, beep boop.
The other complaint that I saw, which I disagree with, is that the show is too slow.
Really?
Yeah. So
I completely disagree with that.
Here's the thing. I think it is a slow burn show. Mm-hmm. I don't think that is a knock against it, because there's some people will do this sometimes where they'll say, well, the show was boring. I'm like, well, that's kind of subjective, because boring slow doesn't necessarily equate to something being boring.
Right.
Sometimes slow-paced, like slow burn thrillers like this are very good. Mm-hmm. And it's good because the show is taking its time building up the scenario, and then occasionally it has these moments where it ramps up really high, and then it comes back down to give you to give you that, because that's what the show is really going for. And yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, we'll get into some of the issues with the show. I don't think a lot of them show up until closer to the end of the series. Some of the like actual complaints I have, especially in that, we'll just call it the Rambo episode.
Yeah,
I think that's got some leaps in logic.
You want to go ahead and get into it?
Well, I don't know. Is there anything before that? Like, I thought the cast was pretty good.
I thought the casting was. There's not anyone's acting that really stands out as being bad.
Yeah. And I think it's awesome because both Chris Pratt and Candace Wu, who came from Parks and Rec and Fresh Off the Boat, respectively, sitcom-type comedies, are playing complete straight-laced roles very well. Like, I'm so, like, honestly, dude, I'm so happy to see Chris Pratt in something where he's not, like, the lovable, goofy comedian hero. Yeah, like, he's completely straight-laced. And I don't really have his performance in general. Don't really have any issues with.
No, I don't either. I think he does a great job.
Nothing that comes to mind.
He stays in his lane and doing an action movie, but he changes it to it being a serious drama instead of, as you said, a goofy, comedian.
Yeah, he's not the sarcastic, witty. Yeah, he's not like mowing people down or like taking dudes out in the cartels and then cracking jokes afterwards or whatever. It is. Yeah. I mean, it's serious, and I think episode 4 is my favorite. That's the one where he goes to take out the cartels. Do we talk about the setup for this? So I'm gonna stay away from very specific terms because I know we have a couple people that follow us who are like in the military, and they're gonna correct me anyway. So his SEAL team gets killed. It turns out that the reason that that's happening is because of a specific drug that they were taking that was supposed to disconnect them from the fights, right? Like that's kind of a generalized
trauma from encoding on the brain,
right? And so, in doing so, it keeps PTSD from setting in from all of these scenarios that they go through,
and thus they can be utilized a lot longer as well.
Yeah. And so what ends up happening is that this SEAL team that they were doing this experimental drug on, legally, mind you, which I think is a really interesting twist in the show, that it turns out that what they're doing is technically legal. And this is something we talk about all the time, but it's like they are part of the state. Mm-hmm. When you sign over yourself to be part of the military, you give up a lot of rights. Which includes sort of like your bodily autonomy in a lot of ways. Which I was like, that's such a good detail. Was really, really happy about that. So his whole team gets killed. Mm-hmm. His wife and his daughter get killed. And he thinks that he's going crazy, which I think was a great setup for the first couple of episodes.
I do too.
I'm pretty sure for me, up until the one... I'm just going to call him a mercenary because that's pretty much what he was. Yeah. Contractor. He kills that one contractor with
the Sicario.
No. This guy's working for.
Oh yeah, for
what's his face? His name's slipping my mind.
Steve Horn.
Yeah, for Horn.
I know his last name's Horn.
So he's working for Horn, and my dog is going crazy. And he's at like lunch with Candace Wu's character, the journalist, and she gets in the car with him, and he backs up the car into this guy, and the guy shoots first, and that was the first moment I went, oh, dude, he's not crazy. I was like, something's actually going on, and I like that before all of that happens, they're towing this line of making you think like this show might not go in the direction that you think it is.
Yeah.
Like, he might be losing his mind, and then of course he slightly is because of the tumor, but it's not to the level that they kind of first push on you, and then you start to realize like he's totally getting gaslit by all of these people that were in leadership over him, or whatever the case, whoever it was, like all these people that were involved that he later goes on to like take out.
And I love the tumor in his brain and how it affects him, because even though he's this highly skilled Navy SEAL, it gives him a obstacle to consistently overcome. Like he may not be able to get out of every scenario because of this, and it affects him in every single scenario because it comes back to be a hardship for him to overcome. And then he tries to get some pills, or he gets some pills to help him mitigate the symptoms, but then he forgets the pills, then has to get them again. And so it works.
And one of the things that's great about him too is he's definitely a morally gray character. There are a couple kind of like Boy Scout-ish moments where I'm like, I feel like I wish they had gone a little step into him like accidentally killing someone that shouldn't have died, because it's a little clean. I think one criticism I probably have, at least in the justification as far as like what he's doing. Right, because obviously there's a lot of questions as to if what he was doing was the morally correct thing to do.
Right,
but what you fall on is more of this like morally gray area of him taking all these people out because they murdered his team.
Right.
And how far he goes, like, those are all questions that in a much longer discussion you could be having. But he doesn't really take out anyone that you could consider, that I remember, that you can consider a quote unquote like good guy.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? There's one dude.
Who?
In the very last episode. Hang on one second.
Okay.
In the last episode, there's a guy that puts his arms up and he puts his gun down, and he just shoots him.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, oh, this dude's smart. He knows what he's doing. And then Chris Pratt's character shoots him anyway, and I go, oh man, come on. So I mean, like, you could debate whether that was the correct thing to do or not.
Right. they definitely try to present him as morally gray. I think for me, that idea somewhat falls flat because I think it's much stronger that he's doing the right thing. I think the writing could have been a little bit more, as you were putting it, morally gray to kind of give that ambiguity there. Is he good or is he bad?
Yeah.
Or at least depending on your perspective, right? And so I think they just over the top push that, hey, he's on this revenge narrative, maybe not to the actors in there, but to the audience as we're watching it, that he's doing the right thing. He knows what he's doing, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, I think I would tend to agree. And again, most of these are like minor complaints.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I think the Rambo episode is the one where they kind of lose me a little bit.
Yeah. That's the worst episode of all of them. Exactly as you said, because of the logic, because he falls off the cliff and his body like contorts like in half around the rock.
Yeah, he gets shot at the beginning of that episode.
Uh-huh.
And he's going and that's like, okay, whatever, like he could survive that. Again, they really do. One of the things I like about the show a lot is that they do a really good job of it at the very least. Like it's up to you to decide whether you kind of believe the scenario. Mm-hmm. And they kind of go through the process of showing you like he's gone under incredibly hard training. Mm-hmm. So a gunshot wound probably wouldn't stop him.
Yeah, exactly.
The thing that I'm confused, I don't know if it's, I don't necessarily want to say it was the writing with certain things in there, but from the very beginning of that scene, right? So he's in this truck and he steals it in the previous episode. He crashes. And somehow all of his like pills, ammo, one of his guns, they're all like flying out. They fly out everywhere.
Yeah.
But he only has like the backpack and then his AR-15 with him. And I was like, wait, like he had that backpack like zipped up tight. Like how did all of his stuff
fall out,
end up all over the and I would have to go back and watch the previous episode to see if like he panicked a little bit and was like moving through things and got in, but as far as I could tell, like that wasn't the case.
No. And so how he kind of just slipped away from the gunfire too.
Yeah, there's a little bit of I say a little bit. There's quite a bit of convenience in this episode. So like a lot of that happens. I think it's good for a little while. I really like the scene where he's like sitting up on top of the cliff and he's got all the like the Fed boys in his sight, and he has the opportunity to take them all out and he doesn't. It's a great character moment. Very, very happy with that. Mm-hmm. It's funny considering it's in my least favorite episode of the season.
Yeah, no, right? Like a great character moment in the least favorite episode, and he sets the bullet just straight up.
Yeah,
and the FBI agent's like, "What does this mean?"
Uh-huh. And the other
guy, whoever he's with, I think he's FBI, right?
He's FBI. I was a little confused. Listen, I'm not like there were a lot of agencies. Those other guys might have been. I don't know if they were SEALs or because they were the
HD or HOT or something.
Fugitive Task Force, the FTF. So I don't know what agency those guys work for. I would assume the FBI, but I don't totally know. Feel free to let us know. And then he goes. That next scene is basically the one where he's like climbing down the cliff and he falls on the rock, and I literally like cursed, and I was like, oh, okay. It was like his hip is broken, something's broken. And he's like, no, he's fine, and you're like, guys, come on.
Takes him a minute to get up from it, but he's basically fine.
It's like, and I was like, crap. I was like, I like the show. I was like, but if I'm gonna be that particular about it with Black Widow, I have to be particular about it here. And I'm like, guys, stop making characters fall onto other objects from heights and come out of it relatively unscathed.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I think for the most part, the show does that well. It's like this episode, though, because then he gets chased. Yeah, he gets chased a little more, and he causes a mudslide. And then
that CGI for that mudslide was bad.
It wasn't good. It wasn't good.
That was bad. He just happens to ride on top.
Yeah, and then like he basically comes out of it completely unscathed, and then you think, and this was the moment where I was like, oh man, they're going to commit to killing one of the FBI agents, to give sort of that push for them to like go after this guy more, and they don't, and she survives too. And I was just kind of like,
escapes in the river.
Yeah, it gets a little convenient with all these people surviving this entire incident.
What's also convenient is how Reese's friends seem to have unlimited resources.
Yeah.
Like, how is she able to get that plane so many times?
Yeah, they sort of set up that I think that's like part of her business.
Yeah,
I think you're right. There's some. If I was to go back and watch this. And because there's a lot going on in the show, there's a lot of characters, there's a lot of moving parts. The story is pretty simplistic for the most part, but the way that it's sort of laid out can get a little complicated, if that makes sense.
Yep, I agree with that.
And yeah, I thought his brother, Ben, who is either his real brother or his brother from the SEALs.
I think his brother's from the SEALs.
Okay, because he just I think you're right. It got confusing occasionally because I was like, he's really kind of treating him like he's legit family, which I guess is a thing with the SEALs.
Yeah.
Like I'm not trying to criticize any of that. It's just the show for someone who is like a normie when it comes to those things. It didn't really. I got confused. Like, is this guy really his brother? Anyway.
It's okay. Now, I understand why you would, but yeah, it's definitely more of the friendship.
That dude
brotherhood.
He's kind of, as far as all of his friends are concerned, he's the most confusing to me because they kind of set up that he's supposed to be sneaky, kind of a spy. I think he's like CIA or something like that. But he's just so squeaky clean for like 99% of the episode. Like he just slips out of all these situations. He never he even makes a point to say, because I thought this was going to come up later, where like this mission was messing with his actual like work schedule and the things that he was supposed to be doing for the organization that he works for, but then it never comes back up again. No one ever looks into him. They don't know where he is, and I'm like, I was like, I don't know, man.
Considering that it's the CIA too, he's supposed to be a ghost,
right,
at that point as well, or during all that up until they reveal him. And so I think when they first set up in the first few episodes, first 2 to 3, I kind of figured that he was going to betray him. And so I kind of saw the betrayal coming, but then as it goes on, it made me think, oh, well, maybe they're not going to do that.
Yeah.
Or maybe that will lead once it gets later on before episode 9 and episode 7 and 8. Maybe it will, or 6 through 8, maybe they save that for next season, and there'll be some story arc with that.
So that's what I was kind of hoping, because he gets that list of all of the different like fake accounts that were the different people that were helping in the experiment. I guess that's like, no, wait, hang on. So so he has like the list of the different people that were in higher commands, or that they were all involved from different government agencies in this project and covering up the project. And so that's he ends up going after a lot of those people, as well as the people who were kind of on the surface, like the cartel and some of those other people.
And he wasn't expecting his family to get killed.
Right. And yeah, that was
yeah.
But what I was hoping, because there's like a name on the list that wasn't known. And I'm going to stick to my guns with this one, even though I'm pretty sure it's different in the book. I think what they should have done, because it turns out it's Ben.
Right.
That Ben's the last person on the list, and it's supposed to be this emotional moment. It didn't really work for me, personally.
It didn't for me either.
And the reason is because we didn't really get to know Ben very well. And so I understand that that Reese had a connection to him. But I didn't have any connection to him, really. He was just sort of like the guy who constantly got out of trouble and was helping Reese throughout the season. Yeah. And so what I really think they should have done is just left it a mystery and written Ben in, because there's 4 other books in the series. And and I don't really know how those play out for the most part. I kind of looked up the scenario for the second one, or like the plot line for the second one, and they have to like bring him back because there's like terrorists or something like that, which is fine. But I thought it would have been pretty cool to have been. You have this running thing where like there's still some stuff going on from this first season. Some like after effects of that, and he still doesn't know who that last person was. Like okay, Ben, right? Again, if he's supposed to be a ghost, if he's supposed to be that good at his job, he should have been good enough to and known Reese well enough to avoid him. And I think what they should have done is played that out. Maybe not till the very end because you don't want it to go on for too many seasons, but give more attention to Ben as a character and his relationship with Reese, and that they've gone through so many different things together, and then it comes down to that exact same kind of moment where Reese eventually, you figure out some sort of way to that Reese figures it out. Someone gives up Ben, or some sort of something happens, and then they get to have that confrontation, so that you're like, no, please don't kill him.
Yeah.
Like after all this time and because for this it's like. I would have to read the book to know for certain if it's just like different or it works out a little bit better in that. But there just wasn't enough of a connection there for me to be like, great. Or like, oh man, I really feel for
what's going on.
This situation. It just didn't quite work for me.
I agree with you on that.
And I almost think it would have been more interesting if he like forgave him maybe. I don't know.
That's what I was saying, that I thought that it would have been even better at the end if you hear the gunshot and you see Reese on the ship and then you see Ben, but you don't know. They display it in such a way you don't know if he intentionally misfired or if he shot him, and you don't find out till next season. And the next season opens up with Ben is alive because you could play on Reese's hallucinations.
Yeah, which I also, one of the other things I thought was happening throughout the series, I thought Ben was already dead at one point. There's a couple moments where they kind of play with that, and then it doesn't really come up again. I think, though, again, minor criticisms where it's like there's certain plot points that don't totally follow through to the very end. And for there to potentially be like one other person in his life that just wasn't there the whole time, but he thought was there when like helping him with the mission. I thought, and again, I think that's maybe another reason I thought that they might have been related or something like that, is because they seem to have that really close connection. But yeah, overall, man, episode 6 is a little weak. I still don't think it's like, compared to a lot of the other stuff that we've had to watch this year, I still think it's a pretty strong show.
I think it's a strong show for sure. I mean, it's better than The Witcher.
Whoops.
It's better than The Witcher as far as laying a great foundation, a great show, good world building. Obviously, setting in our country and everything. So it's not like it's too difficult to do world building with that. But
I just passed it. There's another really good scene in the show where he's going after a guy in the mountains. I can't remember how this guy's connected.
Oh yeah, he's the lawyer.
Yeah,
in Miami.
He shoots. The guy's like driving down this road in the mountain, and he shoots him. And my first thought was like, because this is pretty. I think this might be like episode 3. It's pretty early on in the show. Mm-hmm. And he shoots him, and the car like crashes like crazy. And my initial thought was like he was just going to hurt him and the guy would crash so that he could interrogate him. But then the guy's like car goes flying off a cliff. And I was like, oh, dude, are they really going to tell me that this like lawyer survived this long enough for Reese to go over there and interrogate him? But then when that's not his plan at all, I was like, thank you, show. Thank you for having a brain, for simple logic like that. Yes. I mean, it doesn't even have to be the smartest thing in the world. They just understand that this scenario, that dude is going to basically be within an inch of death, and and we get to see that like Reese's intention was just to take his phone. It wasn't to actually interrogate the guy. And I was like, thank you.
You know what makes the show great is that it doesn't subvert, like in a way it does subvert expectations, right? But they subvert expectations in a good way, and it really is about payoff and satisfying the audience, right? Like if I see Reese carrying an axe, I want the payoff of him using that axe. Yeah, not just throwing the axe away and then using a gun.
Yeah, and
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, what's really cool is that those axes are sort of like there throughout the show, and then episode 4 is when it like he uses it on the cartel guy that killed his family.
Yes.
and like tears that dude's stomach open, and then like
Dude, it's such a great
he just like
scene.
hangs his intestines up over there to like get them
Tells
out of
him
the
to
way or
walk.
whatever. Yeah, dude. I was just like, man, and again, not every show needs to be like this, but it is wonderful to see a show where the main character and the characters in that take the scenario and everything is happening seriously.
Yep.
And we don't get stuff like this that often anymore.
The scene at the end with him using the axe and hitting Donald Cerrone, who's the former MMA fighter, just retired, in the head with it. Oh man.
Yep.
Good scene. I did like what'd you think about these two lines? I wanted to ask you when he says, because Reese is a kind of vigilante.
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of reminded me of Batman when he said, if someone says, it's time you let justice take it from here. I think it's the FBI agent. And he says, I am justice.
Yeah.
I am vengeance.
Yeah. I was like, okay.
And then
I was like, all right, whatever. That's kind of what I think my reaction was to it.
I did like this next line. It would be a mistake to push a man to violence if violence is what he has dedicated his life to perfecting.
Yes. I think that's really good. I'm really glad that they don't like go heavy-handed on like biblical stuff in it too, because that opening line had me a little bit worried. I was like, oh man, are we going to get like this really like state propaganda
conservative?
Look how great your government is kind of show. And it's like pretty much the exact opposite.
Video I sent you.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that line is one of my favorite. There was another one I really liked. I should have written it down, but I really like that line because it really does show. It's like you train a man for violence, and then you do these things. It's like, what did you expect to happen?
Yep.
And
exactly,
it's really, really, really good. And apparently, Jack Carr did an interview with Joe Rogan. So now I really want to go listen to that.
That'd be good. I think the show also did a good job of just keeping you guessing on which side the Secretary of Defense was on.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty good.
And then displaying that at the end. And I think there's an argument to be had that she's probably the most complex character in the show.
Yeah.
Because it's and refresh my memory, does she know about, I mean, I know she approved the experiment, but then she was given false medical records from the Admiral. And then at some point right before their mission where all the SEALs get killed except for Reese, she finds out or she knows something's going on in the midst of the WARCOM. And for those 9 minutes and 15 seconds or whatnot, she's
basically given a moral choice that we don't know about in the first episode to either abandon the mission and essentially ruin her legacy / career or whatever, or to let it go through and no one potentially be the wiser. And so I agree. I think she's quite complex as a character,
and she chooses the latter and ends up offing herself because of the backlash to her legacy, because it meant so much to her, and she realized she made a bad choice in those 9 minutes, and I like the idea of one choice in that 9 minutes and the impact that can have on you.
The one thing I thought was a little like maybe borderline goofy evil villain thing is when Constance Wu's character is in the library writing up that report and she sends it, and then like evil Secretary of State walks in and was like, haha, you never sent it at all. I'm like, all right. I was like, I'll go along with this. I was like, this is getting into that territory that's a little like I don't know. Yeah, like wouldn't, and in my mind, I'm like, wouldn't she have double checked with something this important right away that guy got the story, and been like, oh crap, something's going on immediately, rather than like,
and not just assume that it went through. I do it for basic emails.
but I like Constance Wu's character quite a bit. I think it was cool and a good idea to have a journalist that seemed to be legitimately on the moral, like up and up. Like she and I really like the line too where I think it's the Secretary of State is talking to her and she says, well, it's like, is this about doing the right thing or about your like advancing your career? And she's like, why can't it be about both? And I was just kind of like, I like you. I was like, I like that they're, again, you're talking about a somewhat complex character. It's like she believes in the things she's doing. She believes in helping these like military personnel with these awful things that the government was doing to them. But she also is like, yeah, but it doesn't mean that I can't have a career, that I can't, make something of my life because of that. And there's just like some honesty behind that I think works really well.
Yeah.
And I was pretty like from the beginning there. I wasn't like, oh no, what are they going to do with this character? Like, is she just going to be this one-dimensional, like, oh, the liberal journalist, or like, you know what I mean? They make her a bit complex. She's got a very different outlook on things than Reese does. And again, talking about moral gray characters, like he points a gun at her at one point. He's like, he's like, get out of my car.
Get out of my way.
Yep. Also, very interesting that one more thing. This is the last bit of criticism.
Okay.
The show takes place a majority of the time in LA, and LA has some of the strictest gun laws in the country. There is no way some of those scenarios would have gone down exactly like that. Now, I'm willing to kind of like put it aside, for the sake of like the story moving forward or whatever. But like, Constance Wu's character, it like shoots a dude in the subway. There's no repercussions for that. Like no one even realizes that she's the one that did it. Like Reese, has all of these like firearms that he's concealed carrying. Now you could make the argument that he's military, so he might have
that's probably
some leeway for that.
Yeah.
But all of these characters are like carrying around firearms or whatever, and they're in LA, and I'm like, this is a little
not
suspect
how it
to
goes
me.
down.
I was like, I don't need like a big exposition dump about it, but it would be nice for them to at least make note of the fact that they're in LA, and LA is like pretty notorious for that.
Heavy on gun crime or guns.
Excuse me.
I did enjoy how the story weaved his family and friends throughout it.
Agree.
And specifically his family, though, and in certain scenes and kind of hampering his ability to do what he needs to do. So
and I mean, like, it might be like a little bit overdone, but the theme of like death with a bird constantly running into the window.
Oh yeah.
At some point, I was kind of like, maybe you could have cut some of this, like a few of those moments out. Like, I don't think we needed to see it
that many
quite
times.
that much. It's like back when The Punisher was out, one of my biggest criticisms of that is that they constantly kept referring back to the fact that his family died. And it's like, bro, we know. It's like even in season 2, it was like they would happen all the time, and it's like, yeah, dude, we know his family died. We know that's why he's doing what he's doing. You don't have to remind us every single episode about the bad situation that led him to where he was. And so
same thing here.
Yeah, this show does it a little better, I think. But that same scene, like over and over again, it just felt a little bit like they were trying to hammer that home a little too much.
I agree. I think doing that less, and then in the last episode, how they harken back to it would have worked a lot better. Again, small critiques here, but overall, a great show. I think it's worthy for, take your time and watch it.
Very happy. Yeah, very happy with. I was hooked, man. Really, really, really enjoyed the show.
Chris Pratt does a phenomenal job in this.
Yeah. Oh, the scene where he like takes out the dude that's like the vice president of Jai Courtney's company or whatever was that was really good. The show is played seriously and it works really well because of it.
I'm sorry. Let me say this. A lot of people are saying, I like this because it's anti-woke. I don't think this show is anti-woke. I just think it's a show. And I don't, you know what I mean?
It's not, anti-woke would be saying that it goes at 100% against all of that stuff. And I don't think that was the point. I think you're right. I think it's a story. They're telling a story. It's like something being military or whatever doesn't make it not anti-woke. And if you think about it, like, the stuff about like pharmaceutical companies being like awful and the government and like being kind of like anti-government and against a lot of these people who these like corrupt politicians and stuff like that. That's not, I wouldn't consider that anti-woke.
Yeah.
Like I
wouldn't
get
either.
that a lot of those people kind of fall into the like corporate like love fest these days.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's so goofy, and like I don't think it's a good reason to like something. Because a lot of people said that about that movie he made. That it wasn't very good. Shoot.
That Chris Pratt made?
Yeah, the Tomorrow War.
Oh, yeah.
It's really funny because the first time I watched that, I think I was just like happy to see something like a lot of other people were that very much wasn't like
woke.
it wasn't it just wasn't preachy.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't. They were trying to make like this like fun action movie or whatever. It's really dumb and doesn't really make a lot of sense. And when someone kind of pointed out a lot of that stuff to me, I'm pretty sure it was Mahler. I was like, this movie is pretty stupid. But again,
That's how it works, man.
I was just happy to see a movie that was sort of like, we talk about themes. There was like a theme of like fatherhood in that, and protecting the people that you care about, and risking your life for them, and sacrifice. And so it's like on that level, there was quite a few things in there where I was like, man, it's nice to at least see someone taking a shot at some of that stuff, and not just like the bad dad scenario, or like, oh, the dad is an idiot and he can't accomplish anything and everyone has to like, do everything for him or whatever. It's like, no, it's what they were trying to go for was like the exact opposite. It just kind of like failed in a couple places.
It's kind of like, our reviews of Mortal Kombat and Godzilla probably being more favorable just because they weren't being preachy about a message.
Yeah, it's like neither of those movies are gonna get like high tiered rankings from me.
Yep.
But it's just like, yeah, it is nice to see stuff that's like they're just making this because they want to make this and they're gonna have fun making it, even if it is stupid. Which has never been my problem. I just, it's like, it's nice to have something where you actually kind of have to think about what's going on in the show a little bit, and you got this like espionage type stuff, and betrayals of government agencies. It's just cool, and
it is.
I would highly recommend, if you've seen this and you liked it and you haven't seen Reacher, that needs to be on the list as well. I actually think I like Reacher a little bit more than this. I'd have to think about it a little bit more, but I think it's. I'd have to think about exactly why, but like my first initial like gut reaction is that I like Reacher just a little more than this. Because man, I watched Reacher in like a day. Like I sat down and watched every single episode.
I haven't watched it yet. You're talking about the series, right?
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Yeah, I don't really like the movies that much. And then if you liked the one that John Krasinski was in as well, Jack Ryan, I think that one's decent. I think the first season's better than the second season. But if you're into the sort of like political thriller type shows or whatever, I think all three of these are pretty
right
good.
Up there.
Yeah. Not so. There's a movie that came out with oh shoot, he was Killmonger.
Oh yeah,
you know who I'm talking about. Why is his name slipping my mind?
Michael
B. Jordan.
Yep.
Called Without Remorse.
Yeah,
it's kind of in the same line too. I didn't think it was that great.
I think we did. Did we
review
talk
it or
about
not?
it?
I can't, dude. Honestly, I can't remember.
I watched it, but yeah, I think you're right. I didn't think it was amazing. I didn't think it was terrible either. I just thought it was all right.
I just thought the plot sort of meandered around, and it wasn't really clear exactly what they were doing. And like they set up this whole thing where he's like supposed to be the like basically Iron Man of the Rainbow Six universe or whatever. And I was like, that's interesting. I was like, I feel like you guys probably should have spent some more time figuring this out if that's what you were trying to do. But yeah, I think this is good. Terminal List at the very least is my second favorite of that sort of like, military genre of these like shows with the serious action heroes. And I'm glad this exists. I think it's a nice balance to like the Marvel, Star Wars, everything. Yeah, everything has to be goofy because we can't have serious moments. You know what I mean?
Everything has to have some kind of
legit, dude.
Modern political activism going on.
Yeah, exactly. If this show, if like in that 4th episode when he's like cutting that cartel agent open, if he had like cracked some goofy joke in the middle of it, I probably would have turned it off. I'd been like, you know what? No. I was like, I'm done. I don't need any more because I'm so tired of that dude.
It takes you out.
Yeah. So yeah, highly recommended. I don't know if it'll be like top 3 for me this year, but I think it is a good contender for that. And again, really happy to see Chris Pratt doing something other than his sort of like textbook
goofy
character. Yeah,
action role.
Yeah, the thing that he's constantly getting
praised
typecasted.
Oh yeah, typecasted in.
So
yeah, exactly.
All right, man. Well, unless you have anything else you want to add, we can close it there.
I think that's it.
Cool.
I think it's an overall great movie or TV show, and I think it'd be well worth people's time to go see.
Absolutely.
And yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, not really much hate there, or criticisms, I should say. Trying to think, is there anything else? Just go follow us on YouTube and TikTok.
Yeah. I guarantee there's some stuff we missed, and people will let us know if we overlook something. Like, didn't you think this was weird? And be like, yeah, actually, you're probably right about that.